presenter is Nadežda Christopher, and your title of presentation is Kazakh multifunctional particle ROI.
Yeah.
The first description. So welcome.
Thank you. So, hi everyone, and thank you for having me here. So as you can see, my title has changed a little bit. It's the first full description. So there have been some provisional sort of small descriptions, a couple of like a page here or a couple of sentences there, and I'll tell you a bit more about that. So I'm kind of, one of my aims is to provide the first full description of this little particle ROI that does a lot. And just to go a bit sort of ahead of myself, even my conclusions have changed now from what we have in the program. I've done more research, I've done more reading, as you do as a PhD student, so things have changed, and I'll tell you all about it. Okay. So we'll start with introduction. I'll tell you a bit about myself. Then we'll go straight into ROI, what is ROI, and previous research overview. Then I'll provide some further examples that I collected during my own fieldwork in Kazakhstan. And then I'll tell you about the main sort of couple of questions that I'm dealing with right now, and my preliminary hypothesis on those as well. And then we'll have some conclusions, and then you'll be free from me. So with the very generous help of the Wolfson Foundation Scholarship, I'm working on the information structure of the Kazakh language and its relationship with the syntax in that language. And ROI is also sort of part of that research. My fieldwork in Astana took place in from September 2015 to May this year. So I spent 9 fantastic months in Kazakhstan and collected loads of very interesting data that I'm now dealing with and trying to get my head around. So let's go straight into ROI, and what is ROI. We have the big Kazakh-Russian dictionary that defines it as ROI or KOI. So it has this consonant assimilation. If it follows a voiceless consonant, it's realized as KOI. So they define it as a particle used to add emphasis and expressivity to the content of an utterance. And they also remark that they translate it into Russian as ved or zhe. So, as an example, they give item ROI. So I did say, or I said, didn't I? Like, I told you so, kind of thing. Unfortunately, this example and few sort of further examples are given without the context, which is a bit problematic, I think, for a particle like this. It's highly, as you'll see later, it's highly context dependent. But this is what we've had in the past, all right? This is what we have. They also talk about this particle being used to soften a request or a command. So, Kele ROI, come here then. They'll say it to a child, to a younger person, oh, come here then, come here little one, kind of thing. So that's another thing that is used for. And according to some Kazakh grammars, ROI is a particle that adds completeness and assertiveness to a statement. So, for instance, keldi ROI, he did come, or he came, didn't he? Again, without the context, it's a bit difficult to understand what it means, but that's what we have. And in number 4, we have oljas ROI. He's young though, he's young, you know, like he made that mistake, but that's because he's young, kind of thing, in that sort of context. Then we also have this wonderful gentleman who wrote his PhD on evidentiality in Uzbek and Kazakh, and in passing he mentions ROI as well. So he says something, he literally says that it's limitless in distribution, which is problematic in itself for me, and I think for most of you it will be like, what is limitless in distribution, right? But in any case, that's what we have. And then he says that the addition of ROI merely indicates that the speaker is expressing an emotive attitude toward the content of an utterance. As critical as I may be of this description, I can understand where he's coming from, because it is, you know, if you ask a native speaker, a lot of native speakers will say, oh, it's emotional. And that's what I used to get a lot as well when I was like, what do you mean by that? So why did you say ROI? Why did you say KOI? Oh, it's emotion, it's, you know, that's what they would say. So I think he just went with that. Okay, fair enough. Then we have Rayhan Muhamedova in her recent publication, her recent monograph on, it's called Comprehensive Grammar of Kazakh. She states that Roy appeals to shared information between the speaker and the hearer, and she claims that the particle has a fixed position in a sentence and must appear after the predicate. So, and this shared information thing is that's what I used to think as well. And this is what you have in your programs. But okay, that's kind of sounds a bit more defined and kind of works. So far we have Roy that does shared information, it does completeness, it does softness, emotivity, expressivity, assertiveness, it's limitless in distribution, but also it has fixed post-predicate position. So quite messy. All right. Some of these descriptions kind of counteract themselves, like contradict each other, and we still don't know what's happening. So, and now I have further examples to add to the whole confusion. So, in the examples, so now I have examples that are contextualized. I have two speakers, speaker A and then speaker B, and sort of speaker B hyphen. That's a second option that is grammatical in this case, but not felicitous in this context. All right. So speaker A says, "Kairat kishe dukinge bargan jok." It means Kairat did not go to the shop yesterday. So speaker B wants to correct the person and say, "Yeah, he did go. Of course he went." He'll say, "Kairat barderoy," or all barderoy. And alternatively, I have to note here that we can also say Kairat barde without the roy. That's also okay. But what I wanted you to note here is the change in the stress pattern as well. So here we cannot anymore talk about roy being limitless in distribution and sort of just being emotive. It clearly interacts with prosody, it clearly interacts with some sort of stress patterns, it interacts with a verbal phrase. And then unfelicitous sentence would be, so it's a grammatical sentence in B hyphen, but it's infelicitous in this case, Kairat koi bargan. If we want to say Kairat did go, so this in fact means it was Kairat who went. Okay, where koi changes the position. And I'll show you the next example, we'll have the reversal. The B will become infelicitous, where B hyphen is the felicitous one. So it's the context like that. Keshe Bolat dukinge barde. So speaker A says, yesterday Bolat went to the shop. Speaker B wants to correct the actor, right? It was Kairat who went, not Bolat. So sentence B becomes infelicitous here. We can't say Kairat barderoy. We have to say Kairat koi bargan. And what's interesting here, we cannot say Kairat koi barde. It becomes ungrammatical, and again we can see that for one, koi and roy are not limited to post-predicate position, because there it appears after the subject, and it interacts not just with a stress pattern, it actually interacts with the verb form that we use. So more and more questions as we go along. So now my real question is like, what does it actually do? Because it clearly is not just that. And we can't have, it does not describe anything, doesn't tell us anything, all those multiple definitions. So one of the main questions now is, what is the underlying meaning of roy? That is what is the common semantic denominator uniting all these uses of roy? And the second question is there more than one? So, and I'll tell you how these questions were motivated and my preliminary kind of answers to them. So preliminary hypothesis 1, in answer to the first question, I went and compared roy with the German doch and the Russian je and ved. As the dictionary tells us, Russian je and ved, great. Luckily there are good studies on those, recent studies. So McCoy's study of 2003 looks at the Russian je and ved, and when I compared the functions and the meanings and the use, I found that ROI is indeed very similar to combined uses of že and věd in Russian. So McCoy bases her understanding of these particles on the notion of contrast. And contrast, she takes Valduvi and Vilkuna's idea of contrast. And it's like a cover term for several operator-like interpretations of focus that one finds in the literature, be it identificational foci, exhaustiveness foci, contrastive topics even, and also interrogative WH words. They also say that the basic idea is that if an expression A is contrastive, a membership set M, which includes that contrastive expression, is generated and becomes available to semantic computation at some sort of quantificational domain. So, based on this, what McCoy proposes for že is that že marks the membership set, one member of which is activated in a hearer's mind at the time of the utterance, while the other incompatible member, so this is where we have the contrastiveness bit as well, is viewed by the speaker as though it is or should have been known to the hearers and should have been activated at that time. So returning back to our example with Bolat and Kairat, the felicitous answer B with a hyphen sounds like it was Kairat who went, come on, I've told you this already. You knew this. You should have known this. Like we can continue that sentence with something like, I told you this yesterday already. So we coming back to the definition, we have something that the incompatible member is viewed as though it should have been known to the hearer. With věd, in Russian, it marks information known to the hearer, but not activated in the hearer's mind at the time of the utterance. Okay? So for věd, the set membership is restricted to propositions which have elocutionary force of assertion. Doesn't quite apply to ROI because ROI can do different elocutionary forces, but it's still the case here. Also, the members of the set are not mutually exclusive, but rather supplementary. So that's an important bit. And we need a further example to show this, how this works for ROI. So this is a beautiful example. It was the very first sentence in a folk tale which explains why camels spit. So that was a fascinating read. But this is like the literally very first sentence, and it says, "Tuye khazardin wazinde ademi ROI." At the present time, camels are beautiful animals, aren't they? Or like, it is well known that, you know, everyone knows that. That's what that little ROI kind of does. If we omitted ROI here, we would be simply stating it. We would be simply telling people, nowadays, camels are good-looking animals. So again, coming back to the definition, we mark the information that is known, that the author presumes to be in the common ground of everyone they are addressing the sentence to, but not activated. So we are activating it. So there's a bit of a contrast going on there. So again, we could have contrast on different levels of utterance, discourse, and wider common ground. Okay. So further questions stemming from this is, how does ROI interact with different elocutionary forces and verum operators? So, for example, the use of ROI in questions and with negation. I do not give, for time sort of economy purposes, I do not give examples of ROI used in questions, but they create something like tag questions. That would be translated as tag questions into English. So again, we have two utterances, two propositions that exclude each other with a question mark after them, kind of thing. So it does a lot of interesting stuff there. But I have yet to kind of look at it properly in detail. I'm also interested to see how we can formally model ROI, its meaning and interaction with immediate and wider context. My formal sort of theoretical background is in dynamic syntax. So, and that will give us, which works beautifully for contextual dependencies and for seeing how the meaning is created online in real time as we process the language. So I'm expecting a lot of interesting stuff there. I'm looking forward to doing this. It will be very complicated, but it will be good. And also what I showed you earlier, the prosodic patterns within the verb phrases, so how that interacts with prosodic patterns. And also, I should have added it here, how it interacts with those tenses as well. So that was very, very interesting. So here we might be looking at informational structural analysis of sort of contrastive focus that Roy marks, and it's being incompatible with one of the tenses because perhaps that tense has some kind of intrinsic focusing as well within itself. Thank you. So preliminary hypothesis 2 in response to the second question, is there more than one Roy? I follow Karagiosova's observation for the German particle doch, and from the fact that Roy performs a multitude of functions, we can hypothesize that there is more than one Roy. We need further examination, and we need to identify both phonological and syntactical sets of features for all those Roys, as she sort of identifies for doch. Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh. So provisionally there may be 4 different kinds of Roy, but for time purposes I'm not going to go into that at the moment either, okay? But that's also going to be quite interesting. So what Karagiosova says for doch, she specifically concentrates on the 2 types, and one of them is an unaccented modal particle. So she goes as far as distinguishing them to the point of like saying that one is a modal particle and the other is an adverbial variant. And she's looking at the ones that are placed at the end of a clause specifically. So she shows that these 2 types are linked with the information structure of a sentence. We have the information structure coming back again, as well as with the hearer's attitude towards the preceding utterance. So she concludes, though, that the common semantic denominator that I'm looking for Roy, for these and 2 other types of doch is the notion of contrast. So again, we have je and vied linked with contrast. We have doch also linked with contrast. So my proposal now is that I'm going to look further into seeing how Roy is also bringing the notion of contrast into the utterances, and how that works, in comparison with Russian and German. Does it work for Kazakh? Preliminary, it does. It looks like it does. So, my preliminary conclusions are that, obviously, Roy is a far more complex particle than presented in the literature to date. It is not limitless in distribution, nor is it always in a fixed post-predictive position. We can hypothesize that the notion of contrast may be the underlying semantic element of Roy, which is to be confirmed. And we can also suppose that there may be a few types of Roy. And Rahmet, thank you very much. Thank you.
Questions, please?
He's always got questions. No, it's good.
So I'm very much interested in that interaction with prosody. I don't know if you could go back to that slide.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm wondering, forget about this context, like if out of the blue you wanted to say be without the Roy, where would the prosody, where would the main stress go?
Barde. Last syllable. I've got a Kazakh speaker there, so she's nodding vigorously.
Which is the same as the last. So basically the second sentence, it's not really stated in this context, it's just the way you would say it even out of the blue. So you, by taking Roy away, you're losing that contextual assertiveness or whatever it's doing.
Yeah, ish. Yes. I mean, we wouldn't really say out of context he went. Mm-hmm. We would always say he went somewhere, or we would already have the notion of where the person went, kind of thing.
No, not necessarily. What's up? What Karat left?
Okay.
What's new? We left.
Yeah.
So, and then the other question is in the other slide where you have it after the name. Then is there any prosodic prominence on Khairat?
Khairat Koy Barkhan. It's prosodically prominent because it's contrasted. Yeah, it's
so essentially it looks like it's associated with the prominence of the.
Yeah.
So, which, yeah, could.
Sorry?
With the prosody, so basically if it's after the noun phrase, then you get prominence on the noun phrase.
Yeah.
If it's after the verb, then you get the prosody on the main verb, which is what you're trying to actually focus.
Yeah.
So sort of association with focus kind of thing. The same way that only, would be put before a VP, you can put the stress on V or on the object. It would be interesting to look at a transitive sentence and to see if you can actually put the prosody then on an object with particular.
Yes, you can. And coming back to differential object marking, it will depend, like where Roy goes will depend on whether the object is marked or not. So it will not be able to go between the unmarked object and a verb.
Yeah.
Because that would be a kind of one item kind of thing. So
which is
so the prosody there, I still need to check that a bit more carefully. I'll need to go back to the recordings, but that's a good point.
The fact that it can't go in the middle of a VP is also not very strange, across languages.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it can go if the object is marked, no problem.
Oh, so if the object has moved out for me, if it's outside the VP, kind of maybe in a higher position, then you can actually interest.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So very much like a focus marker to me.
Yes, it depends what you mean by focus as well. That's the thing. But because it does so many other things, we cannot say just focus marker. I've not given some other examples, and that's what I'm talking about. Like there are maybe 4 Roys, so there are a lot of other. That was my initial intuition as well. So thank you.
It seems to me that Roy, Bardroy, Kerdroy has some modal shade. Am I right?
Somewhat, sorry.
Modal. It is confirmed. Bardroy. Kerdroy.
Yeah.
And it is used with the imperfective and perfective aspect also. At the same time as indicator of these two things. Am I right?
I wouldn't say modal specific, like a modal meaning. I would not say that.
Confirmation.
Yeah, like a confirmative. Yeah, a confirmative rather than a modal. Yes. So yeah, the person kind of, but also. So confirmative or contrastive, I would say.
One of the meanings.
Yeah, possibly. Yes. Yeah.
And the perfective and imperfective also has its.
Yeah.
Bardroy for the first time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Another question.
Oh wow.
So this is a really interesting discourse particle.
Thank you.
I didn't quite understand the distinction between hypothesis 1 and hypothesis 2.
Sorry.
Your evaluation of these actually then. So for example, with your camel example, the camel that spits, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
So there, the function of Roy actually doesn't really seem to have anything to do with the underlying meaning, semantic meaning that you were pushing for. Contrasted. This is not a context for contrast, right? So I was wondering how you can explain the. Or entertain the idea that there's this core semantic meaning that has to do with contrastivity, and then this.
Okay, I don't treat contrast as a semantic meaning at all. So if we go back to that, so it kind of generates a set of propositions. All right, so it doesn't have. It's more to do with information structural status. So it's not really semantics. If you want to push for a specific area, I would maybe go with pragmatics a bit more. Okay, so I don't see it as a semantically.
Yeah. So you're more in line with hypothesis 1 then, right?
They're both they're both in response to 2 different questions.
Okay.
So hypothesis 2, they both lead to the same idea, so that they're linking like doch or že and vet with the pragmatic and information structural meaning of contrast. All right. So they're both. But they just answer into different questions, and I'll analyze compared with different languages, just to gather as much information and as much grounds for further questions and for further research as possible at this point. Yeah. So did you want to go into that example a bit more?
Yeah.
So where are we?
So this was on page 4.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that helps.
So that one here.
I mean, this reminded me of in English we have "and everything and all" or something kind of constructions where.
Which one? Sorry.
In English we have "and all" and everything where you share the same knowledge as the interlocutor, and then you say, well, and everything and all, kind of this.
That would be that would be kind of the case. So here again, just going back to that. So we're talking about information that's known to the hearer but not activated at the time. So we're like, the notion of contrast here works in the sense that we are contrasting the information that's active against the one that's maybe known but not active, and we are making it active and say exactly that. So again, there is still more to think about and more to talk to kind of analyze, but these are the preliminary findings so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so one last question, please.
Hey.
Is usual sentential negation a suffix on the verb?
In Kazakh, they have a couple. Yeah, so we'll have with the verbal predicate, we can have a suffix, but it depends. Like for the past, they would prefer a participle plus negation, negative kind of existential. Does not exist. So it's
Okay.
like that.
I was just going to ask whether the particle can be used to contrastively focus on negation. So like John doesn't know the answer. John does not know the answer after all.
Yeah. That's one of the as you saw, that's one of my further questions to have a look at how it interacts with negation specifically under question 1 in the brackets. So that's a great question, and that's really what I want to know next as well. I'm looking. That's my next on my to-do list. It'll be very interesting.
Okay, the Uzbek and Kazakh is very close language.
Yeah.
In Uzbek, instead of boy, we use ku.
Okay.
Yeah. Gayret vardı ku.
Uh-huh.
That's the same. I think the idea of this research can be easily applied for Uzbek language too. It's a good
I'll get on that next.
Yes. So, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.